When I made the video, The Biggest Misconceptions About the Long Dark, I didn't think I'd have to make a second one, or even a third one. I already have enough topics for a follow-up to this video, so consider this a recurring series from now on. What are misconceptions? I guess it's a fancy word for falsehoods or incorrect understandings. Really, there is no one to blame for one's misunderstandings of the game when information is scattered across multiple game modes and isn't always clear. Not every story is concluded, and you can't fault the mind for connecting details and getting it wrong. So what I aim to do here is come across a misconception that seems common enough within the community to address and hopefully correct it. Let's begin by giving you your spoiler warning for the video. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment for the algorithm so I can keep making these videos. Perhaps one of the most common misconceptions that I used to see a lot of, but I see more now that Black Frost has been announced, is that the quiet apocalypse has caused a perpetual winter. I can tell you for a fact there is nothing in the game or outside of the game that I'm aware of that says there is a perpetual winter. To show you how I know this, let's look at each part of the Long Dark and the Black Frost announcement. Let me start with WINTERMUTE. The opening cutscene shows us there is a blizzard before the first flare even struck. In fact, it was so cold outside that the water pipes in the Jackrabbit remote transport hangar froze. Next, we know the approximate time of year that WINTERMUTE takes place in. If you pick up the prison bus manifest from the collapsed tunnel in episode 1, you can see it is dated November 20XX. The actual year doesn't matter even though it can be estimated as 2022, but we know it's November when the quiet apocalypse started. We can also find a pre-first flare weather report about incoming blizzards in Greymother's house, as well as dialogue from Father Thomas that explained his familiarity with the weather of that time of the year.
Weather's turning worse. I fear another blizzard is on the way.
How can you tell?
The farmers of Pleasant Valley have been part of my flock for years now. Over that time, you start to see the patterns of things. Blizzards are common this time of year.
This is enough to tell us that WINTERMUTE and the quiet apocalypse started in late fall, which is deep into the cold season for some parts of the northern hemisphere. What about survival mode? You can clearly live a full year in-game and it is still winter throughout. Well, that's because the game isn't designed to support seasons. From what I can tell, seasons were on the original roadmap, but that clearly never happened. In-game, it appears like there is a perpetual winter because that is what the game is designed to do. In lore, there is no perpetual winter. I guess that's what I'm trying to explain with this particular misconception. In lore, there is no perpetual winter that we know of. What about Black Frost? The announcement of the sequel is probably the reason why there is an uptick of people believing the universe of the Long Dark is in a perpetual winter. Well, if you look at the Steam page for Black Frost, it says it's been 1 year since the Aurora's appearance. So it looks like it's winter in Black Frost because it's been 1 year since the start of the quiet apocalypse. A warmer season likely occurred in between, but we don't really have any evidence of it yet. In Black Frost, if there are harvestable plants, there had to have been a warm season for most things to grow. Otherwise, there would be barely any food for herbivorous animals, and therefore barely enough food for carnivorous animals. We can see both herbivorous and carnivorous animals in the trailer for Black Frost, so a warmer season definitely happened. Well, I guess this all can be ignored if they want to go the because game route, but there really is no evidence of a perpetual winter in lore. In game, on the other hand, it does appear so because that's what the game is designed around. I guess that is why it is such a common belief. This one in particular really shows how many people didn't fully understand the Tales trilogy. It makes sense considering the first two tales were written in a way that skewed our understanding of the events and our opinions on certain characters. This kind of explains why there was so much confusion across the board after the third tale released. A lot of people believe that Rudiger's machine is responsible for the first flare. There are a number of things wrong with this idea. 1. The experiment is confirmed to have taken place before 1991. This note from the beginning of the Buried Echoes tale, which is preceded by another note by the same author at the Mindful Cabin in the Forsaken Airfield, is one of the few notes with dates down to the exact day within survival mode. The other notes being the Mindful Cabin note by the same author and this note at the main hangar at the airfield. The specific wording of this note, especially the mention of a security sweep at the airfield and a build being greenlit, at least to me, points directly at the security chief. This would have been part of her job prior to the experiment, putting the estimated timing of Rudiger's experiment as late 1982 to before 1991. If the first flare struck in 2022, there is no way a machine that was shut off and partially destroyed 3 to 4 decades before could have caused an extinction-level aurora. Next, I want to point out what the machine was actually built for. Rudiger tells us directly in Last Horizon that he was trying to create a better model for the interior of the planet. He even mentions the term geology, which is why Great Bear Island was important for the experiment. The machine was indeed sending something down into the Earth, but it would be no different than how we actually measure and theorize on the makeup of the Earth's interior. In real life, we can use seismic waves from earthquakes to measure everything from the distance and depth of the epicenter and so much more. What Rudiger's machine likely did was send sound waves into the Earth and see how it reacted. This would present data that could be used to determine the thickness of different rock layers, their densities, their depths, and other vital information. This was his new horizon, to create an advanced model of the Earth that would revolutionize geology and geophysics. Finally, the energy from the machine could not possibly interact with the Earth in the ways that I've seen people suggest, which involve the Earth's geomagnetic generator, the core, and the magnetic field. The game is grounded with real science behind it, as well as some sci-fi elements and creative liberties, but these theories are pretty extreme. Thanks to the project foreman, we know the machine ran on enough generators that could power a small town through a winter season. Not only would it be impossible for the machine to have a measurable effect on the Earth's magnetic field, such as weakening it or causing a reversal, but it would be impossible for this influence to cause an aurora. Then you would have to account for the fact it was only on for a brief period of time and was off for decades before the first flare. We do know what causes auroras in real life though, the sun. We also know what caused the first flare thanks to the disclaimer before the game loads. The use of the word geomagnetic ties the first flare to the sun. Plus, the sun is a part of the study of astrophysics, which is something that Jace tells us in episode 4 is the reason behind her fears over what is actually happening with the auroras and how long this, the quiet apocalypse, would last. I can confidently say that there is very little chance that Rudiger's machine is connected to the quiet apocalypse in any way. While the tales have a connection with WINTERMUTE, we kind of already know what that connection is. It's the outbreak at Perseverance Mills that seems to show similarities to the outbreak caused by Rudiger's machine. The last misconception for this video is something I briefly talked about in the previous video, but I have to cover it here extensively because I believe some gamers are sexist. No, Astrid Greenwood did not try to get Will Mackenzie killed by convincing him to fly her to Great Bear Island in the middle of a blizzard. Let's start from the very beginning, which is the Seraphim cutscene in episode 3. In it, we see that Astrid receives a desperate phone call from Jane Yang, the woman we see at the end of episode 4 at the Perseverance Mills docks. She is begging Astrid to find a way to get the cure to the outbreak to Perseverance Mills as soon as possible. Jane asked if she reached out to Will, which she had been hesitant about doing. It's understandable considering they clearly had a traumatic divorce. This cutscene in the middle of WINTERMUTE shows you why she needed to get to Perseverance Mills, and shows you how she didn't want to bother Will about it. In the opening cutscene in episode 1, we see her do this thing she didn't want to do. She was even preparing to leave when he wouldn't budge. Will was extremely aware of the dangers of the request solely based on the fact there was a blizzard outside. He was not dumb. He accepted the risks because he trusted her. Trust is an important theme across WINTERMUTE, and it was very clear from playing it that Will and Astrid still trusted each other and cared for each other even before the plane crash. They had their honest conversation from the heart inside the plane, and they were clearly willing to communicate after what they went through. They even held hands while crashing. Upon awakening in the quiet apocalypse, they were separated. Astrid was still in the plane while Will fell down a ravine. She was heard by Grandmother screaming in Milton asking for help, which she did to help rescue Will and then again to rescue the townspeople in the burning schoolhouse. Despite leaving him in the hard case behind and escaping the town of Milton through the collapsed tunnel, she always meant to come back for him. We know that because of these cloth markers she tied from her scarf. Will even reacts to them as you run into them. She would not have placed them if she never intended to return. He recognized the scarf she was wearing even when wrapped around Hobbs's injured arm, which Astrid was responsible for. My point is that this belief that Astrid intended to get Will killed is completely disproven simply by playing Wintermute, paying attention to context clues, and carefully hearing how they speak to each other and how they speak about each other to other people. How was she going to kill him if they were going to land in Perseverance Mills, which is full of people? How would she get back home if she killed him at Great Bear Island? There's also no way she had the foresight for the arrival of the first flare, allowing her to rely on the plane crash killing him. She would not risk her own life for this. She would not risk her own life in any conceivable outcome on what was supposed to be a rogue medical doctor bringing vital medical services to a forgotten corner of the world. If Hinterland wanted this to be a part of the story, it would have been a little more obvious. What I believe this theory, which is hard to even call it that, comes down to pure sexism and toxic masculinity. This runs rampant in the gaming community. For some, it is a mortal sin to have an intelligent, independent, and morally good woman get airtime in a video game. I would not be surprised if Astrid being smarter and objectively a slightly better person than Will is where this theory comes from. I say objectively because, even in the apocalypse, Astrid followed her Hippocratic oath to help complete strangers in a life or death situation 3 times. Once in Milton with the burning schoolhouse, once at Thompson's Crossing, and the 3rd time will be at Perseverance Mills. Will also did some good things in his time on Great Bear Island, but I think Astrid has him beat by a bit. My point here is not that they are in a race for who is the better person. My point is that a specific group of people likely believe this theory purely because she is an intelligent, independent woman. It is quite frankly a disgusting, easily disproven, and misinformative belief, and I hope to the Darkwalker that this is the reason why this theory has been commented on my channel on various occasions. Otherwise, I don't know what other explanation could possibly lead people to believe in this idea. Honestly, the average gamer could make for a great psychology study. And that is it for this batch of misconceptions about the Long Dark. Like I said earlier, I already have topics for another follow-up. With the announcement of Black Frost, the sequel to The Long Dark, I'm sure this will be a long-running series for many years. If you've seen any misconceptions about the game and would like to know my thoughts on them, please let me know in the comments. I will definitely take suggestions for future videos. It's normal for everyone to have a different understanding of the game, which can lead to all sorts of theories and headcanons. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and a comment for the algorithm so I can keep making them.